How's it going, everybody? It is Matty here with week 27 of the H.A.M Radio Podcast.
And it is me, I'm going to say it, the king of kangaroos, the Lone Vault Wanderer.
Okay, dude. Regardless, we are joined by two very special guests this week. Would you kindly introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Courtenay Taylor.
Hi, this is Kal-El Bogdanove.
Oh, yes. And what do you two do?
I am a voice person. I'm the female protagonist in Fallout 4.
And I am a voice director and filmmaker. And I was the lead voice and performance capture director for Fallout 4.
Awesome.
Do you know how many people have been clamoring to get both of you two on to the podcast?
Yeah, I know.
I see your Twitter feed.
Yeah, I have, when you first mentioned that we were going to be on there, my Twitter follow requests exploded. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I think Brian went from 1,000 followers to 6,000 after the podcast.
Yeah, I meant to ask you that. Courtney, Cal, do you guys have any follower goals? Because we got Brian up 5,000. I want to see, do you guys have any goals that you want to get to? We're going to see if we can break them for you.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'll take all I can get, man.
2,000? I don't know.
Well, Twitter handles will be on screen, so everyone, please go follow both of them. We'd really appreciate that.
Yes, of course. Yeah, give them that love, that Twitter love.
Twitter has become, I mean, I guess it's sort of, it's kind of important if you're in any kind of visible media business these days, but I think in the world of voice work, it's had a particularly strong impact on the industry. I mean, I know that there are game companies outside of the U.S., in Japan and like that when they're casting, some of them are going as much by how many followers a voice actor has on Twitter as by their reel, which I think is a little bananas, but that's how it's starting to work out. So
I would like 100,000 followers. Can you do that for me? Come on.
Matty, this is up to you.
Oh, God.
You get more views than me.
Oh, come on. All right, everyone do it. Do it now. Or I lose my head.
Make it happen. Make it rain. Twitter
Make
followers.
it happen, Matty. Yeah, Jesus.
As long as every single person who watches this goes and follows Courtney, I think we might be okay. Maybe.
No, I have actually heard that too, though, that people do look at Twitter followers, which is interesting because, I guess because it's such a direct line of communication, to the fans, that it matters. Luckily, they aren't talking about Instagram and Vine and everything else yet because I can't keep track of all of the different things. I'm like, just link them all together.
Yeah.
It's
they
hard.
All update when
Exactly.
You do one of them.
Everybody follow on every single thing. Will be cool.
Awesome. So we have a bunch of questions that we'd like to ask you. Matty, would you like to go first for the first question?
Sure. Why not? So this first question is for you, Cal. Because we noticed in a lot of the pictures you guys were posting online and stuff of the cast being together and stuff that you were relatively close to Courtney and Brian, and Brian in our interview with him raved about you the whole time. We're like, who is this Cal guy? Now we can finally get to know you a little bit, but I just wanted to know if you could kind of go into how this relationship with both your key voice actors, I guess you could call them, has helped with the voice work for Fallout 4.
Oh boy, well, it's it's interesting that you ask. We got to, as a cast and as particularly with the three of us, we got to build an intimacy in our working relationship that is usually reserved for actors and directors who are working on a play that runs for a long time or a television series. You don't, generally speaking, get to do that on a game. In the old days, and by that I mean pretty much prior to this game, for most games they would write everything and they'd get the game basically built, they'd get essentially to the stage where they are now, and then they'd record everything in one big whack in 3 months. And quality suffered because of that, because you're going at a breakneck pace, but also there were opportunities for not just for character development for the actors, but for us to develop a rapport, creatively speaking, that were getting missed. And Mark Lampert, who's the audio lead at Bethesda, and Tim Cubison over at Blind Light, who produced the audio recording, they do a lot of different games, realized that was a flaw in the system, and so they envisioned a new way to get it done, and we have really benefited from that.
Interesting.
Both Brian and Courtenay are incredible talents. They have very individual strengths. Brian is one of the most physical voice actors you'll ever meet.
That's nice for saying he hits the mic stand all the time.
I was gonna say, that sounded like it.
No, I mean he is.
Just kidding, Brian.
He's
I know
like
you're hearing this.
It's amazing how little he hits, because
I hit the mic stand. It's me.
One of the things that you're sometimes with your face, occasionally.
We may or may not have kept tally of how many times I hit the mic with my face.
How many mic stands did you guys actually go through then? Because it seems like there have been a lot of broken mic stands.
Oh my God! Well, no, there's a bunch of different studios, so it's the same mic moved place to place for consistency. But, but what was great about it? I'll shorten this up. What I'm saying is, what is great about it? They each have individual strengths, and I got to really grow as a director. I hope that they got to grow a little as actors, and we really got to grow together, so that, I learned from directing Courtenay, and I'd take some of those techniques and I'd use them with Brian, and I learned from directing Brian, and I'd take some of those techniques and work on them with Courtenay. And so I don't know if this is an answer to the question you asked.
No, that is definitely is.
But there was. We had the luxury of really reaching for some artistic goals that I haven't had very often elsewhere in games, or indeed in any of my work anywhere. So that has been the primary strength of this very long process.
Awesome.
Yeah. And you mentioned this is a 2-year process that you all have gone through, as opposed to a condensed 3-month process. A question that I think brings a unique perspective is, how did you ensure that you maintained consistency in the quality of the voice and the vocals? Because over a 2-year period, if your distance from the mic and the I guess the acoustics of the room or whatever, how did you ensure that the male and the female protagonists actually sounded the same in the end results? Because in 3 months it could be a bit easier, but over 2 years it seems like, one day Courtenay or Brian could have a sore throat, or they could be a little bit they could be a little bit further away from the mic because you've forgotten that distance. So how did you actually maintain that consistency throughout?
Some of that goes to just pure technical considerations, and we worked with the same engineers in the same studios over and over again. So, we've had a lot of really fantastic sound engineers, Dan Montez at Soundworks, and Mark de la Fuente at North Hollywood Sound, and Kelly Vaughel and Brianna Villarreal, and just a bunch of really excellent audio engineers, Dave Atherton, a lot of excellent audio engineers with really good ears. These are guys who can hear like a butterfly beat its wings across the room, and so they were just listening very carefully, and that goes sometimes to just being like, hey, every now and then I might have to hop in the talk back and say, hey, Courtenay, maybe step like 2 inches forward. You're going a little off mic to the left, like that sort of thing does happen. From a more esoteric sort of ineffable perspective, it's an issue of characterization, and that's really your department. More than.
Well, a lot of those sound engineers. I've worked with Dave Atherton since I started, so he knows coming in if he sees my name on the list, he kind of knows what I do behind the mic, and so. And the things to listen for, because we've actually gone down this road with a few little vocal quirks that I have. So he knows what to listen for. And so it was lucky to have people that we've already worked with. Also, it was a little bit, they're different engineers set up differently. I mean, I figured always that they would, it's in the mix too, that the final mix, that they would kind of be able to keep things equal. But I don't.
There's some post-production work. There's also the fact that Blindlight uses the same mics on this game across the board. So not just for the player characters, but so that the project will have a consistent feel. They worked something out early on with Mark Lampert, and there's like a set of the same exact kind of mic tuned the same way. It's like cars that came off the assembly line on the same day. You know what I mean? They're not just the same model, but they're twins, and they're kept in cases in these studios. For when the game is being worked on. But I think more even than that, if the tech side is working, right, if the audio engineers are doing their job, and if I've got my good ears on and I'm doing my job, then you won't even, as a audience member, you won't ever even think about it, because the performance that these guys gave is so engrossing that I really think that there's a lot of lines that you could have a truck drive by outside and you just tune it out because what they're doing is believe me, it happened a couple of times. The weirdest thing is these studios are extremely soundproofed. They're under a flyway for the Burbank Airport. You'd never know it. Wow. They were doing construction for an MTA thing nearby. You'd never know it. The one thing that consistently will put a little low-end rumble in and make us need to have a retake is skateboard wheels on the sidewalk outside.
Wow. So you have construction, airplanes, and it's the skateboards. That's the problem.
On the sidewalk right outside, for whatever reason, that's as they go by, ka-clunk, ka-clunk. For whatever reason, that's the thing that would consistently make us go, oh, God damn it. Sorry, Courtenay, we need another one. But all that aside, they did some really exquisite and subtle work. And honestly, the danger for me is like making sure that I don't get so swept up as an audience, from an audience member perspective, that I am actually listening for the technical consistencies and that kind of thing as well. Because it's very easy to just get totally engrossed.
Well,
what you guys do.
I think we were lucky too in that what they did was they had us, we would record for like 4 days on the same week. And so instead of it being like a day here, a day in 2 weeks, and spacing it out that way, it was really condensed. So we would work 4 days and then probably not again for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a little bit more depending on the month. And then we would come back in. So really it was mostly about on that first day kind of getting back into the groove of things. But then the next day and the next day and the next day you were in the swing of it already because you were still warm. So that was really helpful too, that they didn't spread it out too much. And then honestly, as far as getting into the same place, headspace wise, Cal's a fairly young director, and he brought more to playing opposite us. I would have cast him in this game if I could, because rarely have I gotten so much information and so much participation from the other side of the glass, as far as letting us know backstory, at times I would be overwhelmed because it's such a huge universe.
Yeah.
And, as somebody who has not, played Fallout for hundreds of hours, it was a ton of information coming at me, and I would just be like, okay, I need to write some of this down or something. But it was invaluable because it really got you back in, and you knew exactly where you were. When I saw at the press conference, when we saw some of the footage, it was exactly whatever he had explained to me, my brain had made it look just like it looked on the screen. It was that clear. There was no surprises for me. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, yeah, that's exactly as I imagined it. And since Cal was really my only source of information, I think that's a testimony to how good he was as a director.
That's very nice of you to say. I think it's also some of that credit goes to Emil Pagliarulo and Will Shen and the other writers that are on the Bethesda side, and all those guys for making such a the world of Fallout is so alive.
Absolutely.
On its own, you know what I mean? Like it's so well conceived. It's so. I mean, you guys saw, during that E3 presentation, like they know what the lights on the panels on the computer behind the door look like,
That's
right?
Incredible. Yeah.
And so that, I mean, obviously something like that, a detail like that doesn't really have a direct effect on what we're doing until it does. Like if we ever need to say, hey, Emil, what's the story with, like, are these like 50s style toggles like we're about to hit here, or are they, is it a touch screen, right? Because that might affect the physicality of how urgently she hits the button. They know, and they can always tell us.
Cool.
And
Absolutely amazing.
That's some spectacular worldcraft, and it makes this a rich experience directorially, and I'm sure for you guys as well.
Also, it's kind of fraught for them having it be such a long. I mean, 2 years of letting actors have this information. They let us have a ton of information, which was really a joy. As far as a lot of the times, the games you work on really don't give you much. Sometimes you don't even get dish lines. It's very minimal because they want to guard their storylines, and for them to be so generous with us to create this kind of world required them to really trust us with having quite a bit of information, and I'm very grateful to them for that.
And pretty much anytime we asked for anything, they would. It started out in the beginning when we were doing this like other games we've done in the past. It was basically just a long list of the actors' lines and a file name on the sheet. And then at some point we were like, I was making up dish lines that made sense, but I said to Mark Lampert, I was like, man, I don't know if there's some way you guys could export this with like the actual context of the lead-in line on the page. And they were like, yeah, let me see. Well, we'll have somebody build an algorithm for that. And sure enough, next time there it was, right? And there was all kinds of stuff like that. I've been on this project for 4 years. We've been recording for 2, but we did our first performance capture tests almost 4 years ago now. Tim Cubison from Blindlight, Lev, who runs that company, actually flew us to Bethesda so that we could meet that team and sit down and conceive this process from the beginning so that it would be really done right. And it's taken some effort to perfect it, for sure. I'm not sure if we have perfected it exactly, but it's certainly in a very, very positive space. And the fact that we were able to do that, it really all goes to the willingness of the Bethesda team to share their toys and to be collaborators, and just like their desire to have the best thing possible. Which
I think a lot of fans will really appreciate that, because given that this is the first Fallout game that is having voice protagonists, the fact that Bethesda knows and understands that it's not just speaking lines into a microphone, but the context is so important. The lore, the history, the story is so important if this voice acting is actually going to be executed effectively. And I think Bethesda, obviously, they've been well aware of that, and they didn't just want to tack on voice acting just for the sake of it, but they really wanted to do it well. And based on what you guys have just said then, I think Fallout fans can rest easy tonight knowing that they've taken their time, and the voice acting, it seems like it's going to be brilliant work. So
it doesn't sound like a modernization move after talking to all three of you so far, because that's what a lot of people were worried. It's just that so many games have voice acting now. There's not really that silent protagonist as often that a lot of people were afraid that the Fallout 4 voice actors were just added for the sake of making the franchise current, but you guys have taken great care to make sure that it's actually something,
I I can kind of put that notion to bed, I hope.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
No, you've definitely done that. Don't worry.
In the sense that, you know, the reason that they hired Brian and Courtenay, the reason that this is a voiced character, is all grown out of their desire to have the most effective, most emotionally engaging storytelling opportunities possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
It was not a commercial consideration at all. In fact, it wasn't until we were a couple of months into it that we started really thinking like, you know, man, I wonder if this is going to impact sales. No, it was just about the fact that like Todd and Emil, you know, they were like, we really want to grab people by the heart with this game. We wanted the ability to really go deep, you know, and
oh God.
and so you know, I hope that that, you know, everybody who is skeptical, I mean, they were certainly aware of the, you know, Fallout is first and foremost an opportunity to role play in an extremely unusual world, right? An extremely unusual circumstance, and this is an attempt to enhance that experience, not to move away from it.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome to hear. A lot of people were concerned about that, so that's great to hear that it's kind of for it rather than against it, which I never thought Bethesda would go against it, but to hear it from you guys is great.
Yeah.
Lone, would you like to take the next question?
Yeah, I'll take the next question. See, I love the conversations that we have. That was one question, by the way. We have 7 to go.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, oh God, they're going to kill us.
So anyways, this question is directed to you, Courtenay. So given that this is your first Fallout game and you hadn't played Fallout in the past, what are just your general impressions on the Fallout community? We were having a bit of banter before this podcast talking about the photoshops that are created, you know, particularly with Brian and the last podcast that we had with him. So just generally, what do you think of the Fallout community?
Well, I do have to say that I was in Fallout New Vegas. So
there you go. See,
I was in Fallout New Vegas. I played quite a few characters in that, but I am a little slow on the uptick with social media, and so at the time of Fallout New Vegas, I don't even think I was. I don't know. It didn't come across my radar much. So I really, although I have done the earlier game, I did not come across Fallout fans until now. And it's been interesting. It's amazing to me that the two things sort of stand out, that they're very protective of this property. It's their own, and for good reason. You know, it as a testimonial to how immersive this game is, that people are, I read, I know you're not supposed to, but I go on the boards, and I know there was a lot of trepidation about having voice protagonists. But what's been really interesting is that people have been, while they were protective of the property and not so sure necessarily, that once they saw gameplay, once they were, you know, got wind of what happened at the press conference and saw things from QuakeCon and all that, that they're open to it, and that they've been incredibly supportive. Like, I knew that this was a new thing, and I was like, oh man, you know, I'm going to get some blowback for this probably, and people are going to say like, we don't want this. But at least what's come across my radar has been incredibly supportive, and it is a really funny bunch of people who have a really twisted sense of humor.
Yep.
I think it jibes perfectly with what I've seen of the Fallout, you know, sort of universe. That just watching, you know, when they had the trailer with the, you know, all the different things, that kind of funny bit where you saw Brian's character wearing all the different outfits, and then he's in a dress, and the dog's kind of tilting his head and stuff. It's that kind of humor. It's a little offbeat. It's a little twisted, but it's funny and lighthearted. And so that's what I have noticed, is that they will definitely take the piss out of you, but it's all in fun. And you know, I really had no idea, honestly, what I was in for. Somehow I've managed to, for the first like 18 months or 22 months of working on this game, I guess I was sort of in denial about what Fallout was. And when we went to the press conference that Bethesda held at E3, I was lost. I got off on the wrong floor, and I remember like walking over to the balcony of Hollywood and Highland and looking over to see if I could see, how to get into the theater, and seeing all these people, like hundreds of people waiting in line, and the palpable excitement that everyone was giving off, and just that you could just sense it. And I remember turning around and being like, oh God, this is you. Whoa. I mean, it really hit me where it made my knees buckle a little bit. I was like, it's on, and these people are serious, and woo! Like, I had to run and find Cal and Brian really fast. I was like, this is no joke, man. These people are serious about Fallout. So that kind of brought it. I think I had a little like freak out the next day, but yeah, definitely devoted, but hilariously funny people. And I'm really excited to be able to interact with people. I haven't really done any conventions or anything since we got announced. I did one, but it was still pretty much under wraps. It was in New Zealand. And so I don't, I guess the news hadn't gotten down there too much yet, but it was, I'm looking forward to being able to hang out and interact more, because it's a funny group of people.
Awesome.
Definitely. Yeah, even from
Bring
our
on
perspective.
the photoshops.
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna regret saying that.
Yeah,
Totally gonna regret it, but it's okay.
Yeah,
now it's up to
Never
them to put the
Brian and I
backgrounds
kiss
in.
eyes.
Yeah, usually it's like some type of hypothetical situation we come up with. We don't even have one. They're just gonna go crazy with it.
Whatever we could come up with is gonna be completely topped immediately. So
Yeah, definitely. And again, even just the example of the photoshops is it does reflect the fact, as you mentioned, that kind of offbeat comedy. That's what Fallout has become, and it's attracted those kinds of fans. And while there was, admittedly a lot of hesitation initially with the voice protagonist, and when the E3 trailer had Brian saying, "Let's go, pal," everyone was kind of freaking out and a bit hesitant. But
forget that reaction.
once we saw the gameplay, once we saw examples of Bethesda's work and both you and Brian's work, it just worked, as Todd Howard so nicely
God
coined.
almighty. Oh my God, you just did that.
I just did it. So, but that's the thing. That's another example of
it really just happens. I can't say it's like about a week ago. You know how that term got ruined by that song? All right, Todd Howard enhanced. It just works. Anytime I'm talking and I'm trying to explain something, I go, it just works. I'm like, God fucking damn it, Todd. I'm like,
and even like with Todd Howard,
is his face photoshopped to the side of a snowy mountain. It's like, it just, like, I've been a part of some popular franchises, but it's much more devotional in a very straight up kind of way, as opposed to just really just taking the piss out of everything, but still being very excited and supportive, but having that completely off-kilter sense of humor. I look at those photoshops, I just laugh my ass off. It's like Todd the waifu or whatever. Video games, and he's just happily sitting in the snowy mountain, and I was just like, this is so strange, but I love it.
The best ones is this ongoing joke now that Todd Howard is God. So it's God Howard and Almighty God Howard. They've photoshopped Todd's face onto pictures of Jesus and stuff, and it's that kind of comedy.
Yeah,
I called them
or God powered. That was.
I was gonna say I called them God powered once, and I'm not saying I started it, but I just said God powered once because I saw it in a comment. I'm like, I've never seen that before, but that totally. I hate to say it, but it just worked for his name, and so I said it.
He's
and
a pretty dynamic dude. He's like
Todd is a cool guy.
I was pretty swept up in the hype when he opened his mouth. I was like, I'm buying it. That's good. Yeah. He's a pretty dynamic speaker, and I would definitely, he could baptize me for sure. I'd be like, the power.
There's your Photoshop idea, Todd baptizing Courtenay. Here we go.
My God. That's happening.
Perfect.
It's already on the internet.
Oh my god, that's brilliant, excellent. But again, it just shows, in a kind of weird way, I'll admit, but how welcoming and how open the Fallout community is, and they've accepted, you, Brian, Cal, with open arms, and I hope that you guys do feel the love because, you're joining us in this ride because it's a game we've been waiting for years now. Fallout 3 came out in 2008. And New Vegas not long after that. So the fact that we've been waiting, and it's still at this stage, there's this sense of excitement and just waiting for this game. It's a testament to how passionate these fans truly
almost
are.
at the 2-month mark, man. I can't believe it. I'm so fucking excited.
I mean, look, we feel the same way, not just as. Well, first of all, yeah, you guys have been all incredibly welcoming. There's really no other fandom in games I would be more excited to be a part of. But like a piece of that is because like I went into this project a fan. You know what I mean? Like I worked on New Vegas, but I played Fallout 3. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I approached this thing with a fan's excitement initially. So it's doubly rewarding for us to be hitting this stage now because, like, for a few years I felt like the only Fallout fan on Earth who knows what's coming, and I'm just dying to tell somebody.
Oh, God,
right?
the pressure.
Now finally it's starting to roll out, and we can all talk about it. So we're incredibly excited from that, just from, like, the perspective of we want to play the game. You know what I mean? Like, we really want to play the game.
I don't know, though. I have to say, like, this is, like, the engagement period before you get married, and I'm okay with it. Like, I actually texted Cal the day of our last session and said in the text, I said, if I don't come in, it's never going to be over, right?
Yeah.
Because I really, truly didn't want it to be over. And so part of me is like, I'm excited for the game to come out, but I also, once it comes out, it is over. It makes me sad. Like I would be happy to keep everybody in suspense for a little while longer and just enjoy the engagement period. I'm looking forward to the wedding as well, but still, I when we started, the idea of working on something for this long, I was like, oh my God, it's never going to end. It's amazing. And for the first year, we had this like luxury of being like, you'd go in and you'd be like, we have so many sessions left. It'll be, gosh, it's just great. I never have to think about it ending. And then like we hit the year mark and I was like, oh, okay, there's only like a year left. And then it was kind of like ticking down. And then, there was a few false, like, okay, we're almost at the end. And I kept being like, no. And then it really was the end. And I was like, no, like I was like hesitating going through the door because it's been such an amazing experience. I just really didn't want it to end. And I know you guys want it to end so that you guys can get your hands on the game. But it is definitely bittersweet.
Yeah. But to be fair, there are still 4 DLC to come out, presumably anyway. So I don't think your work is done yet.
I'm gonna say that.
But if they announced a calendar of DLC that lasted the next 7 years, I would love nothing more than to keep working with these two for that long. I mean,
I wouldn't complain. I'm not complaining, man. Go for it.
If you guys want to keep making content, that's fine. Awesome. So we'll follow on from there. Maddie, you want to ask the next?
Yeah, this one, sorry, Courtney, I know your voice and everything, but this one's for you as well. When we were talking to Brian, he said for the male protagonist that when he was voicing the character, he just kind of played as himself. And I just want to know if for you as the female protagonist, did you kind of do the same thing where you just, you didn't have to change your voice or anything. You just kind of played as you in a sense.
Yeah, I would say that this character was probably the closest to me of everything that I've played so far. I mean, it was definitely because it was a long-term commitment and there wasn't so much of an idea of like a character, but it was what this individual was going through, and to make it really truthful, to make the experience truthful. It wasn't so much of like, I've played characters that were far more character-y. So this was more to me about dropping myself into particular situations, how I would react to them, or if I couldn't, just to get like, I can't, like, normal's not the right word for it. But
I know what you're saying though. Like
in so much of the time with the things that I play, there's some kind of accent or some scenario that makes the character maybe a little bit larger than life, or the backstory is a little it's set in outer space or whatever. It's a little fantastical. There's some elements to the character that aren't just sort of a regular human being going through regular things. This was definitely the closest where I just was able to not worry about a particular voice or coming off with a particular attitude. And it was just about really being truthful to the circumstances in the moment. So it was easier in the crafting of the character, so to speak. But the circumstances were all over the map. So it was definitely a roller coaster ride as far as I have not worked on a project this long and had this sort of breadth of circumstance for a character ever. So it was amazing and exhausting and terrifying, and it was everything, honestly, as someone who, when you imagine doing great work on camera, you see these on-camera actors getting these amazing roles where they get to do this amazing emotional work. This, I think, was the role that came closest to that for me. As far as being a roller coaster ride, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know how many choices a player has in one of these games, and Courtenay and Brian had to find an authentic performance to account for every one of those choices. So I mean, it was a big task. It was an elephant, and they very dutifully and with an enormous amount of hard work and sensitivity, they ate it a bite at a time.
So I was going to mention something quite similar to that, because it must have been a challenge for whether the male or the female protagonist. It's essentially that one character and that one voice has to adapt to all of these different types of characters and play styles that people are eventually going to pursue in Fallout, because there's not just one character build you can build. There are so many different ones. So finding that voice and finding that, as you said, Courtney, attitude in some circumstances that would apply to every single play style that Fallout fans are going to be playing as, that would have been quite a challenge, especially for you, Cal, in voice directing. Saying, well, how would the most basic voice possible apply to all of these different situations? Was that much of a challenge to try and approach? Because it's not just one character and you can, take it as you like, but it's one voice applied to thousands and thousands of different character play styles that Fallout fans are eventually going to play as.
Yeah, it's interesting because Fallout protagonists, we know where they come from. I mean, that's nothing new with this game. We know where they come from. We know what vault they come out of. We know kind of who's important to them and what they're trying to do from a really global perspective. So I was gifted in this process with two very, very good actors. And so when it came time to have a given reaction, all we had to do was figure out, what are the circumstances, given what we know about this character and where they come from, what leads a person to then have this reaction where they shoot this guy in the face or whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's always an authentic way to get there.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to jump around and change. It's not changing character. It's being the character and then figuring out what the circumstances are that would make, because everyone is capable of anything, right? I mean, given circumstances, anyone is capable of great violence, you know, great love. And to say that, how do you keep the character consistent but capable of going in many different directions and keeping that believable? You know, I don't think we ever tried to make it so that we would be able to jigsaw a bunch of different characters kind of into one. It was just making one character have believable choices in any particular direction. Yeah. And if you knew what the circumstances were that led to that scenario, it's a lot easier to build that choice sort of backwards. You know what I mean? You take the circumstances, you put any one person in certain circumstances, and then whatever's going on can be justified.
Yeah, you want to find the like, we all know whether we're, you know, storytellers or not, we all have an ear for authenticity, right? Like, we can all tell if someone's, like, we all get suspicious when someone's lying to us because somehow we know, right? There are cues of authenticity in the way that we all interact that let us know when a person is being straightforward and when it's a deception. And my goal, I hate it when I'm playing a game and I choose an option and what comes out of the character's mouth is clearly wrong. You know what I mean? Not right. You know what I mean? We've all definitely had those experiences. And these things are so big, it's almost impossible not to have a clunker or two in there somewhere. Or sometimes you get something like a line where we didn't realize how many times it was going to be said. And then all of a sudden every guard in the country has been shot in the knee with an arrow. But
subtle jab to Elder Scrolls.
Right? But our goals are always to, you know, if you are playing as though you have a death wish and you make those choices that, you know, that a person would make who did in that circumstance, then when you hit that button to have that response, we want it to sound like it sounds to you in your head and in your heart. And that's about finding that, where that authenticity comes from. You know, creating a circumstance and supplying the right information so that these two very gifted actors can put themselves in that place and just have a real moment. So that all our ears, which are all finely tuned instruments for calling bullshit, don't call bullshit, right?
Beep, beep.
No, that's the internet.
I'm so excited. You're the first swearer and not me.
Yeah.
I'm usually
I'll start swearing more, make you guys feel comfortable.
Yeah, we don't really care. I dropped the F-bomb at least 20 times a podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you know, it's we don't want you taken out of it. That's the thing. We just don't want you to get taken out of it by like a lack of understanding or a good enough or a you know, a missed intention on our part. We want no matter what choice you make, you know, for it to sound like what you're hearing in your heart when you hit that button. You know?
So one of the questions that we have here actually flows off nicely. Now, I'll skip one because we've touched on it before, the fact that there was a 2-year voice recording period as opposed to
I was thinking about that.
So I'll ask this question. During an E3 interview, it was mentioned how the protagonist, or both of them, can have 8 different personalities. Now, that necessarily wasn't fleshed out, that particular comment. Are you two able to go into a little bit more detail on how exactly that works or what that might mean? And some players feel that this is related to the options on the dialogue wheel, but we weren't necessarily sure what that actually meant in terms of different personalities, whether that was 4 for the male and 4 for the female protagonist.
Yeah, very, very like bipolar character.
You know, I've heard this number
schizophrenic
8 start getting kicked around after we did that. Not the big main press conference, but the little panel on the floor of E3.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know where that number came from exactly. To to say that they could have 8 personalities, like you're going to pick one at the beginning and it's going to be predefined, is not correct.
Yeah.
That's the clarification we needed. Great. Great.
I can't. I don't. There's a level of detail that I kind of can't go into in this answer.
Absolutely.
You're just going to have to discover for yourself. But the writers really tried to account for any choice you might want to make in any one of the situations. And sometimes we'd actually, during the recording process, we'd get to something where Brian and Courtenay, who had come to know these characters this world really well by that point, where we'd say, boy, guys, it really feels like we ought to be able to say blah, blah, blah here. Given the fact that we had the option to say blah, blah, blah in this other situation. And they'd go, huh, interesting. And we'd come back, and the next time we did a recording pass, there would be that iteration added in.
Cool.
So, there's definitely some technical considerations to this that I can't speak to, just because it's outside of my realm of expertise. But the number of things that you can do expands and contracts a little depending on what kind of quest it is. But always there's you're not locked into anything at any time in this game. I can say that. You're not locked into anything at any time. So if you are having a certain approach with some character when you first encounter them, and then they do something that changes your attitude about them, right? You'll be able to take a totally different approach with them in the next moment that you have choice. And I can say that we almost never saw just a yes or no kind of scenario come up.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
There's almost always an option to find out more, or take an unusual tactic, or back away, or just or blow them away, or whatever I mean, there really is a lot. I think they've revealed this.
There's
right?
always the killing option.
Yeah,
I think they've revealed it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can just leave. You can just walk away from a conversation at any time that you want. You could shoot a person in the face.
Yeah.
Yes.
And but not just those two extremes. There's also there's some
more
real
nuanced
subtle
options.
shades to what you can do if you're continuing to engage with them conversationally. So I certainly can't stick a number to it. I mean, I think there would probably be hundreds of thousands of different ways to do it. Just based on exponential factors of if you choose to go this way at this time and then this other way at another time.
Kind of like life.
Kind of like life.
Oh my God, it's getting so deep.
Yeah. All this and more in my seminar.
That
Voice
tends to
acting
happen on this
life.
podcast.
So yeah, I think that number came from a sort of a casual comment that Todd made when I was joking about how thanks to the fact that Brian and Courtenay are both good. I've said to them partway through this game, because it's so big, the game is so big, and partway through I was like, man, guys, why couldn't one of you have just sucked so that I'd only have to play this 7 times to really hear everything I want to hear. I joke about that kind of thing all the time, but to really hear everything that we did, I would have to play the game top to bottom dozens and dozens of times. And I think I cracked a joke like that on stage, and Todd said just 4. I think it was more like 8 or something like that. I think that's probably. But
this is what us Fallout fans are guilty of. I'll let you know now. I'm sure you can already tell, but we like to look deep and look at these conspiracy theories and take them literally, and be like, this is not a coincidence. This is not them just saying a number. This is more than that. And we look deeper, and then we find out that there's a triangle somewhere in the Illuminati and all that shit.
I got blown away by the guys who, I don't know if you guys are part of this same group or if you've heard of them, but
or
like
if you were them,
or if you were them.
Oh,
But
God.
I saw this.
God, here we go.
I saw this video with these guys who had like recognized certain landmarks and then
Free Will Hub.
triangulated the
Yep.
size of the map.
I was in that video. Yeah.
Are you in that video?
I was one of the voicers. Yep.
Yeah, I'm collaborating with him soon.
I was really blown away. I mean, that was some impressive work, guys. And that was the moment when I was like, holy shit, people are really into this game.
Yeah. Yeah, when they were showing me their work and stuff, like as they went along, I'm like looking at them like, holy fuck, guys! Like I don't know if this is accurate, but the fact that you put this together is ridiculous.
I was
we shrunk down the size to the square miles. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's getting mathematical now.
Yeah. Math is my worst subject. No.
I mean, I was really impressed by that. I was like, man, we need to hire these guys next time around. They know this thing better than we do. But,
Yeah.
So yes, speculation runs rampant. But
yes.
Unfortunately, I wish we could say something more concrete than that. But we're all very committed to sort of letting everybody discover it.
Definitely.
In the moment as well.
Yeah, it just seems like we've gone back to this emphasis on player freedom and choice. Like this is something like a mantra of Todd Howard. Every time he's talked about Fallout 4, he's gone back to choice. He's gone back to freedom. And the fact that you have emphasized the fact that there are so many different options. You know, you're never pigeonholed in a particular scenario. If one person has, for example, betrayed you in some way, you can just kill them. And I think that's awesome. And it does go back to being able to play how you want and be the person that you want to be. So I guess you've really excited me as a Fallout fan, and I'm sure many other people still listening at this point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like have you ever been watching a movie and the protagonist does something and you're like, no, don't do that. Do this other thing that anyone would do. And
don't open the door.
You can't because it's on a rail. Well, our goal was to say, all right, then when you're in this situation, you're like, don't do that, do this, then you can do it. And not only can you do it, we hope, in exactly the way that you want to be able to do it.
Cool.
You know, that like in the way that just doesn't feel like just an option, but it feels like the coolest and most authentic and successful interpretation of that option possible. That was really the approach, at least for us.
Awesome.
All right, Matty.
Next question. This is a very also specific question, but I thought it'd be the response would be somewhat interesting. Because in Fallout 3 in New Vegas, there's this perk called the Black Widow, and like when you're playing as a female character, you can silver tongue your way in and out of situations through actions, such as like an example would be like seduction or whatever. And I know you guys can't provide examples because you said you wanted to all be like player discovery and everything, but I just want to know, Courtney, if you've had to do any voicing for any lines such as that where like you were like, ooh, that was kind of smart, or ooh, this was unique to my character kind of thing.
You don't have to answer if you're going to break NDA.
I thought it was a good question, man.
So your question is, was my reaction to some of the lines being like?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. See, I like to complicate things, I told you us how us Fallout fans are. I like to complicate things a little bit, so I hope you understand.
I'm just reiterating it back. So you're asking me if at any point in the recording process did I say lines and kind of think like, oh, this is really cool. This is specific to my character, and Brian.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Because I know you can't give examples. I'm sure this question would be a million times easier if you could, but I guess I'm more so curious to what you just said. Yeah, like if there were any lines you read and you like reacted like, oh wow, this is funny, or this is cool, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely like there's a reason. I mean, I think that the Fallout fans match the Fallout creators, and that there is a like wacky sense of humor to the games. And so there were times where I was laughing my ass off in the booth, just, where and I think the nice thing about working so closely with the writers and being in on it early enough was I think Brian and I do both have a strange sense of humor, too. And I think that as we sort of got to know each other over the phone wires and stuff, that there might have been some part of the writing that they knew what we could sell, eventually, I think, by just getting, listening in on our ridiculous sessions.
Yeah, they were definitely writing stuff for you guys by the end.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That I can say for certain.
And I don't know. I wasn't privy to like what we didn't get to hang out and like watch each other work. So, I didn't get to, I don't really know what Brian's experience was or what stuff he was saying. So I can't say like, oh, there was stuff that I got that Brian didn't, but there was definitely reactions of like, oh, this is funny. This is crazy. This is going to make people laugh really hard.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we don't actually know, like, even if we were inclined to with our, legal obligations, even if we were inclined to like talk about like what perks there are and when you can do what, like that, we don't actually exactly know, in the sense that like you've probably seen this 13,000 lines of dialogue for each of them figure rolling around.
Absolutely.
That's the 13,000 lines that we kept. I think that in this iterative process, I think they each individually performed at least twice that many.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait, so hold on. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, Cal. So what you're saying here is 26,000 for each, not just like...
No. Hold on. Let me
okay. Yeah, sorry. I had to clarify for myself.
So like I said, we did this. We did an iterative recording process. So they'd write something, we'd record it, they'd put it in game, they'd see how it worked, and then they'd go back and rewrite it, and they'd do that as many times as necessary until it felt amazing. Okay. So while there are probably now in the ballpark of 13,000 per for each one of them, right, that are actually going to be in game.
Yes.
Over the over the course of the project, they recorded twice or three times that many that got tweaked or changed or rewritten
okay.
So like, I will say we've recorded so many lines at this point. It'd be very difficult for us to say exactly what made it in every circumstance and what didn't. But I will say that we have recorded some. There's going to be, like, if you're used to the tone of Fallout where there are some wacky surprises and there are some unexpected options and that kind of thing, you're not going to be disappointed. There's definitely material in there that, as Courtenay says, was cracking us up even just in the booth. Awesome. I actually have. Maybe now's not the time to roll it out. I have some outtakes that don't reveal anything.
Oh, can we get some?
Yes.
Maybe dropping on this podcast.
Okay.
I hope if it can play through the. Cool with Taco Bell doing that.
Please do that. Holy shit.
Yeah, people are gonna lose their crap. Even if it's not in the game, they're still gonna be like, let's go.
Yeah, you guys are, I think, going to like and be amused by this. Give me 1 second here. Hopefully this will go over Skype. If it doesn't, then
it should.
Then
as long as you're playing out of speakers, you should be all right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and you can cut out this part where I search like a doofus.
Yeah. So good.
Through my computer looking for this stuff.
I'm very, very excited about this. Whatever it is. Matty, are you ready?
Yeah.
We're selling kids.
It's going to be like Courtenay screaming dicks 40 times over. Like, that's the funny thing.
So, I have one for each of them because I didn't want either one of them to be singled out.
Okay.
But
cool.
what I will play for you first this is Courtenay had been, she works a lot because she's very, very good. And so sometimes we'd get her in the afternoon after she'd like already had 2 other sessions that day for something else, right? And had been running around in her car, was working her ass off. And one day she had not gotten it. Courtenay, who is normally so health conscious and like eats the best foods and stuff, had not gotten to have like breakfast or lunch and it was getting to be dinner and she hadn't had anything. And so on the way in, she had acquired and hammered back some Taco Bell.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
That's you.
She knows what's coming, doesn't she?
And
not an endorsement.
And
of Taco
anybody
Bell.
who knows, if you eat a huge belly full of Taco Bell on an empty stomach and then you go and try and be high energy, you will feel like a giant slug. And so in order to psych yourself up, Courtenay did a little like shadow boxing, punching the air, Taco Bell kata in the booth, and we happened to be rolling at that time. So here it is for your pleasure.
Okay.
Cause I'm a badass motherfucker, powered by Taco Bell.
And then whatever else is on my...
Oh my god.
So I'll
You can tell, like, that wasn't even powering me up. It was, like, so half-hearted, like, full of Taco Bell, but I'm gonna do this.
Picture you just twitching in the booth, like trying to get things going here.
Here it comes again, I think, with full volume.
I'm a badass motherfucker, powered by Taco Bell.
My god.
So YouTube or iTunes is playing again and again. But so that's Courtenay's. And then I also have from Brian, he was trying at one point to tell a character, fuck you. And he's so physical and he gets so into it that at the beginning he hit it with such force that his mouth didn't even make a word. Right? And then he had a reaction to that experience. So here it is, Brian attempting to say, fuck you, so-and-so, to a character. Here it comes.
Fuck you! Dude, write that down. I'm going to tweet that. That's going to be my first tweet.
I'm going to tweet that.
So
oh my god.
Oh my god. I'll repeat it here for posterity. I fuck farted out my mouth.
Holy shit. Oh my god.
I've been waiting a long time to share these little tidbits.
Oh my god, that got me so...
I'm just saying, I'm going to put this at the start of the video. Both of those things are going right at the start with no context. Holy shit.
That got me so good. He's like, I'm going to tweet that. I actually had a tear coming out of my eye.
We'll compose ourselves now.
Hearing
Courtenay,
Brian...
how was the Taco Bell?
Oh my god, like the way to just destroy myself. I mean, that is not the thing that it's just a bad choice at any time, day or night. And when you're about to do like 4 hours of recording, it's a really poor choice. But I learned my lesson, and generally I try not to
be powered by Taco Bell.
Oh man. But there was a lot of Taco Bell or not, there was a lot of like silly dancing and stuff like that. We did get pretty punchy here and there in the booth. I think there's some footage of me. I love having the face cam on because it sort of gives you like a fisheye lens when you're in the booth watching the actor with the face cam on.
Oh man. That's the best. So not every line, but a lot of the stuff we did performance capture on, right? So that's like, I mean, everybody's seen the guys in the ping pong ball suits and the big volume tracking their motions. This is like a facial version of that, where we have a camera mounted to their heads and a bunch of tracking dots on their face, and we're recording the performance as they work. But yeah, it has this enormous fisheye quality on it that makes you look like a giant balloon head with a little tiny body floating off of it like a string.
So I spent a lot of time whipping and nay-naying in the booth, much to the joy of Dan Montez, who was our trusty recording engineer at that point.
Oh my god, it was amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll end up somewhere on YouTube.
People to work with.
It was really fun. It was really fun.
Excellent.
I'm sorry, but like Brian's reaction when because he's such a nice guy that like hearing him scream in pure aggravation, "Fuck you!" like that. Oh my god.
Matty's still laughing.
And then his his personality flip. He's like, "Oh my god." That was too
Write
good.
that down. That's gonna be my first tweet. Anyway, all right.
Can someone please, whoever's listening to this, double check Brian's first tweet if you can, and figure out if he actually did that.
It's so sweet. It's 2015, and he's like, "That's gonna be my first tweet," and it's like, Brian.
Well, we had this talk in the podcast that we had him on. He said he had this voice acting gig and he didn't have Twitter. And then when I believe it was the voice director thanked everyone for the work on Twitter, they tagged a Brian Delaney, but it wasn't him because he didn't have Twitter. So he was tagged as other Brian because Brian didn't have Twitter at that time. So he's like, yeah, I probably should get on Twitter now.
Oh no, I totally was like, my Fallout husband. And everyone's like, that's not actually Brian. I was like, well, sorry, guy in North Dakota who just got following him for no reason.
He's like, wow, the drill bits I sell are really catching on.
Exactly. But it is Brian T. Delaney. But he's Brian _T _ Delaney or something like
Brian
that.
Brian the Delaney.
It's T for the. Yeah.
Awesome.
T for
Alrighty. We only have 2 questions left, I promise. So, Courtenay, I actually saw you tweet out about this probably several weeks ago. So,
in the
marketing,
old medicine.
Maybe. So, in the marketing for Fallout 4, we've seen a very, very heavy emphasis on the male protagonist, voiced, of course, by Brian. But we have seen extremely little of the female protagonist that you voice, aside from that one mirror scene where you can change facial features. So if there's anything that you could tell us about the female protagonist that might be different to what we've seen of the male protagonist, of course, we don't want to break or help you break NDA, but is there anything that you can tell us about the character that you voiced that might interest fans or that might be unique or different to the male protagonist?
Well, I can't get into the specifics of the character because I have to respect not only in the NDA but just that Bethesda's wish is that you guys get to experience everything on your own, and as it comes down the pipe, that you don't get the jump on things because the way that they've created it is to be. I just need to respect that it rolls out the way that they want it to roll out. But I think, especially on Twitter, you guys have probably seen that Brian and I have particular personalities, and I think Cal can kind of speak to this too. But I definitely have a particular sort of lens for the character that is different to Brian's. And I think there's no mistake in the casting that sort of what you heard of Brian, being super tough and then kind of laughing it off hysterically is salient to his sort of way of looking at things. And I think you're probably going to see that in the game, that's what he's bringing. And that, God, I don't, Cal,
yeah,
what do I bring?
There's so much, we should do this again.
I'm a badass Taco Bell motherfucker. That's what I
mean. You bring Taco Bell to the wasteland.
We should do this again when the game is out because there'll be a lot more that we can say at that time.
Yeah, because Brian wants to come on after as well. So we'll do like an awesome ultra mega cast, we'll call it, and all 3 of you will join, and the internet will explode because no one can handle that much awesomeness in one podcast, and it'll be nuts.
I will say that I will say this will be 100% worth your time as a player to do a playthrough with each of them.
Absolutely, I can tell that by the first look.
Because there are subtleties and differences that are deliberate on the part of the writers and designers that are worth exploring and that were really fun for us to get to work with in the process. More detailed than that, I think we cannot say at this juncture. But yes, they're in there. They're in there.
I have to say, I really like the idea of us coming on afterwards and doing like the, like after Sunday Night Football, like we'll all sit around in like really nice suits and like wave our hands around and like I'll be Terry Bradshaw. And, It'll be great. You
No,
can be like
we're
Ronnie
definitely
Lott.
going to organize that.
We'll
100%.
wave around our Super Bowl rings and stuff, and
Yeah.
and dissect the game. But I can safely say that there's no way that it's the same experience because Brian and I are so completely different as people. Our humor is strange but different, and that not knowing specifically what Brian went through, we did not record together, but just knowing his approach to things, I do think you will get a different experience, and you may prefer one or the other, but I would agree that just knowing what I know, that it's probably worth taking a trip down the lane with both of us.
Awesome. Well, come November 10, I think having a mega podcast is going to be the only way to draw people away from their computer screens and playing Fallout 4. So we were excited about that. Definitely.
Yeah. Well,
Maddie?
I know we would.
So because you broke the pattern, you left me with the question that has the key words not to put either of you on the spot.
Do you want me to say it? Because I wrote this question.
Yeah, if you want to, because I don't know. I left the last two questions for you, but if you want to, by all means.
So this question hopefully brings some interesting discussion. Now, we know that in the creative process of any project, and Maddie and I have experiences as well, there can be a lot of disagreement on various aspects in terms of, creative-wise, where things should go, what things should happen. And were there any times during the recording process for Fallout 4 that Courtenay and Kal, both of you, have disagreed with each other on a particular point? And if so, you don't have to say what it is. How did you work through that, or how did that benefit the project in total? Because, again, with bringing Maddie and I back into the example, we've had disagreements on how the podcast should be run, etc. So were there any similar scenarios when you were recording Fallout 4? Not to put any of you on the spot.
And did Brian scream "fuck you" in that angry voice when there was that disagreement?
That's a really good question, because in most of the other mediums that I've worked, in you could be doing a play, and you might butt heads with the director, or, be doing a TV show and kind of be like, I wish it wouldn't end that way, or I don't think that's the best choice. But I never felt like, wow, Kal, you're, making, I mean, we never butted heads. I always felt like we were on the same side. And if there was something that I was kind of like, well, I feel like maybe she wouldn't say this, that he would absolutely listen. And it was all the way back to Bethesda. It was very collaborative, and that never was there a time where people would be like, no, just say it. Just say the line and move on, or anything, which, sometimes when there's time constraints and stuff like that, people are just blowing through stuff, but everything was very, very considered.
Yeah, from my part, I'll say I'm always happy to hear another take, and I'm never more excited than when one of these guys comes out with a performance that's wonderful, that I didn't expect. That's actually like the best possible moment as a director. Because generally you're giving them signposts and handholds and bits of context and guidance to try and get closer to what what you're seeing, what you're hearing when you envision the script. And then sometimes through the magic of good acting and open collaboration, the end result ends up being greater than what either one of you could have pictured going in. There's a magic that can happen. So, in a really much more practical way, if we're talking about advice for voice directors and actors, I'm always happy to hear one more. So if I pick a circle take that I like, and then Courtenay or Brian, if they're like, actually,
I can beat it,
or what if it's about this, or mightn't she say it this way, or I got one more, or just I got one more, here comes one more. I'll always be happy to hear that. And the wonderful thing about this game and this process is Bethesda gave us the time and the money related to the time to do that stuff. We weren't flooring it at all times. We could afford to go back and experiment. So we never really had to be in a situation where we were butting heads over something. We always got to work it out.
Out of curiosity, would that kind of play into why there was no announcement for such a long time? Because you guys wanted to have that time to make sure you could work out any kinks if there were any?
Yeah, man, that's been the beauty of this process is like, I've heard it said, and at least attributed to Todd, that if he could, he would announce and release a game on the same day.
Of course he would. Thanks, Todd.
Because he's a perfectionist in the best sense of the word.
Yeah.
And that entire team at Bethesda is very focused on getting the best possible product. And so in this case, they took an approach where they could not just write it and hope, they could get it in game and play it and make sure that it worked. And so that left us feeling very free, since we knew, generally speaking, that if it didn't work, we were going to have an opportunity to work it out and get it right. It left us very free, not just to take good selects that were a little more outside the box, but also to give alternate takes, and send them a menu of choices on some stuff. And I would feel very free as a director to go with my gut and give a circle, because we knew we were getting to lend all our expertise and make our very best suggestion, and then ultimately, the real architects of the world would get to make the final decision about what worked and what didn't. And if something didn't work, we'd get a chance to correct it. So from a video game perspective, it was a luxuriant and fruitful way to proceed. And they were really great about us giving them feedback. They were not territorial at all. Like if we were like, hey guys, we really kind of feel like this line ought to be like this, so we're going to send you an alt take where we rewrote it on the fly, they would take that take and check it out, and sometimes they'd change it.
Cool.
It was...
It's a flexible project, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was really a great way to work.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, we have reached... What are we now? Almost an hour and a half, so we've stuck to our word.
We are fucking good, man.
Come on.
We have to be under 2 hours. We can do it.
I know.
Give us more questions. I'm not getting off the horn until we beat Delaney.
How long was our podcast with Delaney? It was over 2 hours.
2 hours.
Right?
I think 2 hours on the dot. I'd say 2
Come
hours,
on,
2 minutes.
fire something else up. Make something up, you guys.
Hey, do you want? We can. I'm more than happy to.
We had that one question we discarded.
Questions.
Matty?
Where was that one question we discarded?
Matty's like, damn it, I didn't write anymore.
I mean, I have one more, but we kind of went over it. But I guess it'll bring a different focus, because it was kind of covered by you, Cal, in our first question. But I like how we're doing this longer because we have to compete with Brian.
We have to beat Brian.
Yeah, that's how the last 2 years has been. I was like, did Brian have a hard time with this? Did he have a hard time with this one?
I'll think of plenty of questions. Don't worry. I'm a very curious person.
Yeah, if you come up with one long, go ahead. But I guess I'll fire this one away for the sake of conversation. For Cal, usually, oh God, we kind of totally answered every dynamic of this question. Now I'm looking at it.
I'll ask a question to
fire it out. Maybe there's something.
I was just saying, because usually voice acting for a game's done in the final months, and that Fallout 4, you guys had such a long time. I was just gonna say, from your perspective, what it's done to improve Fallout 4. But I guess if you have anything more to say on it, then by all means. But I feel like we already kind of answered that question. But hey, if you got more to say, then
there's one other thing that I think I can elaborate on, actually, and why it was good, which is to say that. With a game this size, if you think about the math of if there's 13,000 lines for the player character, how many lines total there are in the game when you bring in all the other NPCs and stuff, it's a huge number. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, as with most video games, there were several voice directors on the project. I'm going to give those guys a shout out too, because they have put every bit as much of themselves into this as we have. Chris Fiella, Bennett Smitty Smith, Phil Bach, Brenda Phillips. Am I forgetting anybody?
They'll come hunt you down if you miss them.
They'll hunt me down. I'm sure there's somebody. One way that this process really benefited us was it gave us time to communicate, the voice directors, about scenes that we each had different pieces of, and characters that we each had different pieces of, and make sure that we communicated so that there'd be a consistent approach. Because, if two different sides of a conversation are getting recorded at two different times by two different directors and, of course, two different actors, you want to make really sure that one person isn't going, "God damn it, I need to know now," and the other person is recording as if they were like, "God damn it, I need to know now," right? It'd be a real problem. And so the last major advantage to this approach is that it gave us time to communicate amongst ourselves in that respect and make sure that we had a more uniform flow across the whole game.
Hold on one second.
It made it hard for me to imagine how you could do a game of this scope any other way, because there's some things that we had as luxuries that not like necessities.
Okay. We're getting breakup on your guys' side. Can you talk and see if we can hear you again?
Hello.
Yep. All right. We're all good.
I think we're good. Yeah, it's just right here. I'm telling you right now. When you're here, it just stretches my internet to its last bit, and you gotta move into my house, man, and we'll just share a mic. That's all we're gonna do.
Because I'm out in Australia, apparently it makes internet for you Americans much. I don't know. It stuffs up Matty's internet. Calls drop all the time. I think it's Matty's
internet. Steal your recording.
But I wanted to ask, when you were talking about the recording process, I know Brian touched on this in our last podcast, but with the voice acting that you and Courtenay did, how often did people like Todd Howard or any other game developers within Bethesda come and just sit in and maybe give some guidance on the voice directing process and the voice recording? Because obviously that they're tight-knit with the game. They know it back to front. They've been involved deeply into the development. So how often did that happen? Did you always have someone sitting in with you, or was that like a rare occurrence? I'd like to know more about that.
Physically, they were almost never there because we're in Los Angeles and they're in Maryland. But we almost always had them on the phone patch.
Yeah.
They were very good about devoting somebody, either Mark Lampert or one of the designers, to the recording process at all times. And there's certain key stuff where we get the big man too, where Todd would come down and put his head in as well. I mean, a lot of it was done with Emil Pagliarulo on the line, because he knows the character side of Fallout 4 better than anybody, I think. He has a great team of writers, a lot of other really excellent writers who work with him and designers. But towards the end, maybe for the last quarter of the process, we had built up such a great rapport and trust with them that they would let us do more work flying solo, just because they were so busy getting the game finished that sometimes they would need to devote those resources elsewhere. But we always had them on call if we had a question, at the very least. And for the bulk of the game, I'd say 80%, if not more, there was somebody on the line listening, all ask questions. They'd work on the fly to adjust lines if we had to, or they'd look up, because there's a lot of lore to keep straight. And even I, can't keep all of it in my head sometimes. So, I'm sorry, what's the deal with these Mirelurks again? Are these the irradiated ones, or so they were unbelievably engaged from that respect. There are definitely games that I've worked on where they're kind of like, yeah, whatever, just send us the files.
Yeah.
And this was not that at all. They were always right there, not just supervising, but generously collaborating and allowing us to work with them, and not just underneath. So yeah, they were on the phone most of the time.
Something that you
though
just
not.
said there, it really, I guess, Matty and I can speak to this a lot, and I'm sure Matty has words to say about it in terms of the lore of Fallout, because it's so in depth, because it's so expansive. There are just times where you might not know something, or you might be incorrect on a particular fact, because and then you'll say that, for example, if we say something that's incorrect on a Fallout video that we make on YouTube, someone will correct us saying, no, you idiot, this is what this is what my lurks are doing here. And it's just like a testament to how expansive the lore and the history of Fallout is, and I'm sure Matty has some words to say about that as well.
No, I mean, I personally, I love the lore in Fallout, and I think part of it, I agree. I think I needed a swift kick in the ass to really get me in, like, fully, like, I'm gonna fucking know everything now. But, like, still, even then, you have to realize you're one human, you can't know everything. So it's good, and I'm saying from my perspective personally that, I check with friends now. I'll check on the internet 50,000 times now because I'm paranoid about not knowing anything. But it's cool that you guys, in a sense, share that same paranoia where you double check the lore and stuff, because it's good to hear that for the people who, like, truly are absolutely obsessed and know more about the lore of Fallout than their own country, Seriously. I'm not saying that as a slam, but some people love the game that much that they're like, I don't know who the president was this year, but I fucking know what year the Fallout timeline diverged from the real American history. So you know what? Fuck you. And it's like, some people take it that seriously. And so,
yeah,
I love it to death. And, I've gone back and played the originals just to kind of further connect myself with it, but it's cool to know that you guys have taken that extra step for those who like think it's a make or break. That's good to know.
Yeah, I mean, look, we try really hard to get it right. There's this concept of verisimilitude, which is like the quality that something has when it seems so similar to reality as to be, or to another thing as to be indistinguishable from it. And it's a literary device that's used sometimes by people who do some like world building where they have a bunch of interrelated stories that aren't necessarily, they don't tie it together directly, but they fill out a larger world, right? H.P. Lovecraft was really interested in verisimilitude and how there's a way to write things so that they seem as real as reality, and how that makes them, in his case, more scary, but in any case, more engrossing, more exciting. It makes it sort of makes you feel more about it. And verisimilitude is a quality that the Bethesda team embraces entirely. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but like, and look, with something this big, I mean, it's impossible to keep everything in the real world straight, right? So with something this big, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be occasional slip-ups here or there,
yeah,
but
yeah, of course,
you guys are human. Yeah, no, it's fine. Makes sense.
But there is a priority put on making sure that nothing goes into the project that's going to distance you from it or make it feel less real and less immediate to you. They really put a priority on that concept of verisimilitude. And that's why when they let us use a naturalistic approach to the voice recording, I thought it was such a good choice. What I mean by that is, sometimes you'll see a cartoon or you'll play a game where like the dialogue is all really, really clean, right? No one sighs or coughs or anything like that. They don't ever stutter. It's all like a TSA announcement plus character. And usually that's because they've had us clean it up, right? They want it to be perfect. Well, there are imperfections in the way people speak. And early on, we worked with Mark Lampert and we talked about this and we said, look, we'd really like to be able to have these guys be alive and like take moments to breathe and sigh and cough and stutter and gather their thoughts and do all the stuff that human beings actually do when they speak.
Yeah.
And they very generously embraced that naturalistic aesthetic. And Courtenay and Brian ran with it.
Cool.
And
I cough in every line.
She talks about Taco Bell in every line.
Brian sniffles and cough.
And that's all a way to try and just make sure that it's as real as possible for everybody, even the people who know for certain, exactly how many Mirelurks infested this structure on this day in Fallout history, right? Like we want it to be as real for that guy as it is for anyone else. So
that's excellent. So you mentioned just before inspirations like H.P. Lovecraft. Are there any other, whether authors or literary areas where even you, Cal, even you, Courtenay, that you drew inspiration from in the development for Fallout 4 with regards to voice acting? Were there any other books or novels or stories that inspired you to create Fallout 4 as the way it is now?
Courtenay?
I mean...
Yeah. I know that's a tough question.
You know,
As an example, Fallout is very heavily based on Mad Max. And I'm sure, like, if you guys have seen the recent Mad Max movie, so if you can't answer, that's fine. But in terms of, were there anything that inspired you to, for example, Courtenay, to deliver lines in a particular way, or to help you immerse yourself in the 1940s/50s setting that Fallout is?
Well, I was going off of a lot of the information that I got from Cal, but I definitely, with as much hype as Mad Max has gotten recently, I couldn't help but, draw some of that in. And plus, I think just for me, that's been on my radar a lot recently for just various things. So that was something that stood out to me a bit. But it was mostly, I have to say, like, I did kind of come in with a clean slate as far as a lot of preconceived notions, and really just went with the information that Cal was giving us, because he gave us a lot, and it was specific to it's. What's interesting actually is, like, I imagined the and I don't know how I got this, and I don't know where I got it from, but I imagined the colors of it. When I saw the E3 stuff, the color palette was as I imagined it, which was strange. So I don't know if it's because I had seen BioShock Infinite,
What a great game.
and that was like on my mind.
Alone,
we had a house, which doesn't really, it's not really a parallel as far as like the story goes, but that sort of slightly surreal color does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, it does. I understand.
Yeah, it's diehard BioShock fans here we go.
There are there are certain influences on the franchise that I try very hard to be educated in, right? Obviously, all post-apocalyptic fiction, but particularly Fallout, owes a great deal to Mad Max franchise, right? There's a lot of commonalities there. So that's certainly a seminal text, but there are other things as well, not just post-apocalyptic things like The Road, which is a book that I adore, but also there's some other influences on Fallout that I think are no less significant. I think there's a lot to be said for classic westerns being involved. Your Red River, you're the Searchers, your Jax, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. All those great sort of classic westerns, I think, have an impact on the world of Fallout quite a bit. That whole idea of a lone wanderer who rolls into town with a gun, big iron on his hip, as they so well used in New Vegas, right? So I try to be educated in that. And then, as Courtenay just said, there's a mid-century modern, like a noir aesthetic. This whole idea of like the gleaming modern city that has fallen into not just actual decay, but like a sort of a moral decay, like a Hamlet kind of decay, where there's something inherently wrong with the power structure, right? That's a big recurring theme in a lot of film noirs, and it's super present in Fallout because like the environment reflects it, right? The society totally failed. And so there are all these sort of rough surviving characters who are kind of trying to make a life in spite of that. So there are influences in that period and in film that I am certainly aware of when I'm thinking about Fallout.
There were so many different sort of offshoots. I mean, I think for me, just going through the different possibilities, something would jump out, images would jump out, or something that I had seen in a movie. There's, sort of where I would go like, oh, this is a little bit like Hunger Games. This is a little bit of like, it feels very Humphrey Bogart-y to me. It wasn't any particular, like one particular genre that really dropped me into it. It was, it's quite a ride in that it takes you through, mood-wise, it took me through a lot of different things.
Yeah, there's a lot of range in the game, right? There are quests that really are comedic. You know what I mean? They have that great twisted Fallout humor. There are also quests that I think are gonna like make your eyes water. You know what I mean? That will cause you to shed a tear or two. And the fact that one game can have that breadth, I think is kind of astonishing. In terms of like what are influences in games now, like just in video games that I'm aware of when we're working, that I like, kind of aspire to in terms of their quality and their depth. Courtenay was in the Mass Effect trilogy, which I think has some of the best and most relatable voice acting in all of games.
Courtenay, I still need to play that series. I'm so sorry I haven't played it yet.
God damn it, why am I just finding this out now?
I will play it, I swear. I'm sorry.
Why am I just learning this now? Are you kidding me?
You better make sure Jack is on your squad and you don't let her die.
Yeah.
I'll play it before 4 I swear.
Till Candy comes out.
I feel so bad now. I feel so bad now. Oh, God.
What do you do with your time? Oh, God.
I do YouTube and Fallout.
I love that his voice just like went up like 3 octaves.
Maybe I should get into voice acting.
Well, it would have been good in the Borderlands pre-sequel game, where like everything was Australian.
Oh, that was a great game.
That was literally you were the only person I've heard who's like that was just such a great game because you could relate to it so well.
Hey, Kal or Courtenay, have you played Borderlands the pre-sequel or any Borderlands game for that matter?
I played Borderlands 1 and 2 like crazy, and I haven't played any of the more recent ones. I sat on the couch with one of the other voice directors, Chris Viola, and we played through the first 2 Borderlands games like obsessively. I couldn't put those damn things down, man. Mm-hmm. I've worked with the Gearbox guys a little bit, and they are they are some far out cats, man. They're making games that are really, they're really not afraid to make a choice that is unexpected, and I like that a lot about those games. I haven't played the more recent ones, but
when you were mentioning about comedic quests, there's a quest in Borderlands 2 where it's literally you have to go up and shoot someone in the face, and that's the quest. And I was thinking. Yeah. Maybe Fallout 4 is going to have some similar comedic quests in there, and also have that juxtaposition with really, teary, sad, or emotionally driven quests. So when you mentioned that, I'm very excited to hear about that, because even as a hardcore Fallout fan, I'll be completely honest in saying this, in that the story has never necessarily been the strong point for past Fallout games. It's more been the immersion and the history and the lore. And it seems like the reason why there has been, voice protagonists in Fallout 4 is because Todd Howard has really wanted to tell a better story in Fallout games. And that's an area that I've always been critical about Fallout games. So it seems like we're going to be getting those narrative, emotionally driven stories. Like, Courtenay, you brought the example of BioShock Infinite. That was a game that was, from BioShock 1 and 2, there were no voice protagonists. And then we got Booker DeWitt, and Booker DeWitt was a voice protagonist, and I felt like I was able to connect with him and empathize with him on different levels because I could hear his voice. And I'm hoping that I get a similar experience with Fallout 4 with both of yours and Brian's characters.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that you can be just, when we watch movies, we're able to be absolutely connected with the protagonists in the movie, even though, we're not, necessarily controlling them, and they're definitely voiced. I mean, I think, at least just for my 2 cents, that having someone be able to serve as a guide through a game, or to have the voicing, hopefully will bring a new dimension to it, and hopefully it will make a better, more. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I have usually a voice going on in my head most of the time anyway. Yep. So to have someone voice the protagonist in a game, I hope will bring it to the next level. And it's interesting that you felt that way for BioShock. I think that's a great testimonial to Troy Baker's craft and talent. Yeah. That he could elevate the medium for you like that. And hopefully we've done this as well. Troy Baker. But I also find it interesting that you haven't had time to play Mass Effect, but you've played Borderlands and BioShock and Fallout.
Courtney, you're making me feel bad.
Unless you need to play alone, I'm going to segue myself here. You know what else you need to play alone?
What?
KOTOR. That's what you need to fucking play. Courtney.
Star Wars.
Courtney.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
All right. Hold on a second. Okay. I've heard your name a bunch of times before Fallout 4. All right. Like, I've heard the name Courtney Taylor 1,000,001 times. Then I hear you're in Fallout 4. I'm like, okay, gotta do a little more research on this gal. I go on your IMDb page, start looking up information. You were in Knights of the Old Republic. All right. If there's one thing I love more than Fallout, I'm flipping the fanboy switch on if you couldn't tell. All right. If there's one thing I love more than Fallout.
Dude, get a little quicker.
Yeah.
Yes.
The one thing I love more than Fallout, it's Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And you were Juhani, correct?
Yes.
Holy fuck.
Maddie's fanboying.
That was my first role of that was my first sort of bigger role in a game.
I want to go on record as saying I am not aware of an actress in the voiceover industry who plays a better badass than Courtenay Taylor.
Thank you.
There are a lot of extremely talented other voice actresses that we have worked with who are marvelous. But I think if you want a stone cold, chews up scrap metal and spits out bullets badass, Courtenay Taylor is your actress.
Oh
for
my
sure.
God! Can you put that on my headstone, Cal?
That scares me now because if I don't play Mass Effect, Courtney Taylor's going to chew up steel and shoot bullets at me.
That's
Okay,
true.
Mr.
It's
Pretty
well within
Muscular.
her
I'm sure you could build some
abilities.
type of, bulletproof shield across your chest. Right now.
I'll play it. I promise. All right. Don't get angry at me.
Yeah, you guys don't know who this is, but
clearly-
Lone, I gifted
I have to
Nissan
say,
all the
Mass
fucking
Effect-
Mass Effect games, and this dude didn't play them. All of them.
Can you gift me Mass Effect games? That'd be great.
Yeah, I probably will, but I get a feeling when I give people games, they don't treat those gifts right, man. Who gets two free games
Matt
and
is gonna
doesn't
act
play
it
them?
all for you.
Oh no. Oh,
Matt is going to act out the whole game for you, one to end.
Oh
It'll be
god.
amazing. He's going to play all the parts. No, I
Can you
do have to say, I'm like Juhani was a really wonderful experience because she was kind of the first of the. I am really drawn to those kind of what's the right word for it? The characters that kind of wrestle with that dark and light, that could really kind of go either direction. And I wasn't really aware of how much I loved those characters just in the movies that I watched and stuff up until I started to get to play them. And Juhani was the first, I think that was only like the third game I'd done. And it set the tone, I think, for a lot of the things I've done so far in my career is characters that could really fall on one side of the fence or the other, could, maybe have done some things that some people would consider make them unredeemable, but that they fight to be that way. The most interesting kind of character studies that I'm drawn to are the heroism involved in trying to get away from what might be the easiest choice in your life. If it, to try and make the right choice, even though the wrong choice or the dark choice might be the easiest way to go. And that sort of tension that comes between your circumstances, potentially being greater than who you are as a person and taking you with them or fighting to get beyond that. And so it's definitely marked some of my favorite characters that I've played since then is that. And Juhani had a lot of that, which I appreciate more and more as life goes on.
Yeah, for anyone who needs context, because you're talking to the right guy right now. Everyone who hasn't played Knights of the Old Republic,
Matt's gonna act it out for you right now.
Oh no, I'm basically gonna paint a
Matty,
picture in everyone's mind. Because if you haven't played, I'm gonna spoil a little bit. Because if you haven't played Knights of the Republic and you listen to this podcast, I don't know what the fuck you're doing in your life. Because Lone can vouch for me. I've talked about this 26 episodes straight now. It comes up. Play the damn game if you haven't. If you have not, you're just ignorant in my eyes, and I don't plead that much.
It's not a spoiler if the game's been out for 10 years and you haven't played it, FYI.
Exactly.
So, go on.
Yeah, so when you first meet Juhani, she's a dark Jedi and on Tatooine, I believe, or Dantooine. Oh, God, I get them mixed up. I'm such a bad fan. Regardless, you meet her, she's evil, and you can talk to her, and you can try to convert her to the light side, and she'll join your party. But what was bold about this whole move is that you can, like Courtney mentioned, you can basically kill her off, take the easy path down the dark path, and you'll never get to know Juhani/Courtney and anything about her, and it's so cool. But yeah, that light and dark stuff that she was talking about, that's kind of what she was referring to in a sense, where I think at the end you can actually like use Juhani to like do your bidding and have her kill certain party members and stuff. It's such a fucked up game, man. I love it.
Matty, did you kill her or did you let her live?
Actually, the first time I played this game was when I was a young kid, and I'm not gonna lie to you, Courtney, you pissed me the fuck off, and I killed you. I was like, what's wrong with this girl? Why is she so depressing? You're doing your job. You did a great job, but I've matured now, so I know you're doing your job right. But that first time I was a kid, I was like, oh, damn, this girl, she's dead. I'm gonna take her lightsaber too while I'm at it. And I got 2 lightsabers now. I was happy. But then I progressed. I grew up a little bit. I was like, oh, wow. You're just wonderful.
Oh, that's brilliant.
You start
That's
to like
brilliant.
complicated women a little bit more. And no, it's, I'm also getting used to having that at first blush. I definitely, when Mass Effect came out, I read the boards before before the game had actually dropped, but I think they had shown some of Jack in action, and people were just like, I'm going to shoot this chick out of the airlock, as fast as I can. I hate
liked her a lot.
This character. But I think it's
so
a
relatable,
testimonial.
though. She's so relatable, I feel like.
She's literally, like, I know Cal described you as this, Courtenay, but she literally is the badass. Like, she's awesome, So I thought it's a fitting role for you.
In this crew. She's Wolverine on this X-Men.
Well, yeah. I do feel like it's, well, I guess it's more acceptable when it's Wolverine, because I think sometimes there is a little bit of a gimlet eye towards women who come across like that in games, and that at first blush she's a difficult woman, and that people might want to shoot that out the airlock. But I think it's a testimonial to the writing and what we put together that a lot of people were ready to hate this character that wasn't, traditionally beautiful, that wasn't very well behaved, and had a dark, fucked up backstory. And then, a lot of people grew to like her and want her on their team. And I hope that she's part of a legacy of, complicated women characters that are not one-dimensional and are not sort of these well-behaved characters that I think the best characters of either gender are complicated. And I loved the fact that Cal and I were just talking about it the other night. We were putting some stuff together about how there's a very particular sort of beauty in female characters. There's a little bit of sameness in a lot of the video game character women, and that Jack sort of stood that on its head a little bit.
That's absolutely true.
I loved that when they made her older and more mature in the third Mass Effect, that they still made her a badass. That like even though they allowed her to grow, they kept her uniqueness and her sort of fuck you personality and look. Because those are the kind. I appreciate those characters more so than maybe the more well-behaved ones. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in story development to take a character that might not be so easily digestible in the beginning, and to kind of let that character spool out and just be somebody that you end up liking more because you didn't like her at all in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Jack went for at least some of the people. That's definitely the feedback that I've gotten. So
just
as long as they keep writing characters like that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just listening from what you were saying then, the character that has popped into my head, and if you've played Borderlands 2, you know exactly who I'm talking about. This is I would say confidently, my most favorite video game character of all time, Tiny Tina in Borderlands 2. Mm-hmm. She was such an incredibly unique character that I remember I was playing with my mate, and we were in the Borderlands 2 DLC, and we were both thinking, you know what, this will top this DLC is Tiny Tina. No joke, 30 seconds on the radio, you can hear Tiny Tina come through the radio waves, and we just laughed in hysterics because she was just like this little girl, but she was absolutely insane. The first time that you meet this girl, she has this person tied up and is just singing this song or childish-like, and then just blows the guy's head off. She was such an amazing character. She resonated with me on so many different levels. I love Tiny Tina.
That's really disturbing.
I could really sync with her psychotic intuition.
But it was. I've never actually seen a character like Tiny Tina in the past, because she just had this different, psychotic, unique approach about her that I don't know. I can't describe it, but she's one of the characters that is stuck in my brain, in my entire video game playing career, if you want to call it. But I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about if you've played Borderlands 2. She's an absolute badass.
I mean, I love that character because, for a number of reasons. First of all, I think they're great in that franchise in general, and I think this is an excellent example of giving you what you want that you didn't know you wanted, right? So like we've all seen an archetype of like an explosives expert who's a little nuts, right? A mad bomber. But to take that and then pair it with like that incredibly volatile stage of puberty that women go through, that the angstiest part of life for a teen girl it's unexpected. If you're used to playing games that take the easiest route, you don't see it coming. But once they do it, you're like, oh yeah, that makes a certain amount of sense. This is a character who's at this stage in her life when she's volatile and unpredictable and explosive emotionally. Why shouldn't she be the one who's actually going around blowing shit up? So yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and it's it's reaching beyond the beyond the easy archetypes to find something new like that. That I think the best games are doing that now, and I think there actually is going to be quite a bit of that in this game, and more even than that. I think that Fallout fans and players take the opportunity of creating a character to do that themselves. I'm always really interested to hear people speculate about like my first build is going to be like this. She's going to be like she survived this car accident and now she won't let anybody put her anywhere near a vehicle or so, like that, like whatever it is. It's being written collaboratively, but it's this amazing collaboration that happens between the designers who made the game and built in all these opportunities and the creativity of the player. So wrapping it all back to Fallout, I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities for people. I mean, you can make all your traditional archetypal choices if that's what floats your boat, but I think there's also going to be a lot of things you can do and choices you can make and performances from these great actors that surprise people in that same kind of way. Give you what you didn't know you wanted.
Yeah. Speaking of Fallout and role-playing, it reminds me of, I forgot to tell you this, Lone, because it kind of works. I was playing Fallout Tactics, and when you create your character, obviously you can name them, and then I didn't realize this until after I made my character, but there was like a bio section, and you can like write up your character's backstory there, because in Fallout Tactics, you have like this Brotherhood of Steel squad that's always with you, and each one has their backstory, and the one that you create, you write their own backstory. So Lone, naturally, I named my character, because I was streaming and I was playing it, I named him Shadowplay. Everyone was shitting on me again. And we'll give Courtney and Cal the story of that afterwards. But I didn't realize there was a bio section for the role-playing, which I thought was awesome. But I could have, it's awesome in that sense of creativity, because I could have whipped up something so damn good for that. He always used open broadcast software.
Even a game like Wasteland 2, if you guys have played that allows you to have this team of people and you set the backstory. And that's a big thing with Fallout. People like to role play. And even if you go onto YouTube and look at people like Gopher, he's doing this role play of this character called Jack in Fallout New Vegas. And that's just a thing people like to do. They'll think of their own backstories. They'll act in-game in a certain way to match that particular backstory that they've concocted. And I think that's the beauty of Fallout. It allows you to really go in depth with a particular unique character that you've thought of and play that out in the game. And because Fallout gives you all of these tools to make the choices you want and act the way you want with very little restrictions, I think on that aspect, people are going to be very excited from what you've just said for Fallout 4, because it's going to allow us and enable us to do that. Yeah. I'm getting very excited about this.
I think so.
Well, we've reached a pinnacle. I think we've beaten the Brian podcast.
We had, because it's not counting the time that we've been recording, but I know we had a 15-minute-ish chat before this. Brian's podcast is 2 hours and 3 minutes. So I don't
That
know.
was only Brian, so that's
Balls
that's
in your
only,
court, Delaney.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah.
Like, there was two of you.
Yeah.
Well, you guys know that when we have the Ultra Mega 3-person podcast, that we're going to have to beat that right out. So,
Well, yeah,
Might
we're
have
gonna
to
have a
be-
whole
it's gonna be
damn
like
game
a
to actually spoil and
telethon.
talk about.
It's going to be a telethon of like a 24-hour telethon, and
Definitely.
we're going to spill all the secrets that we couldn't tell you now.
Yeah. Oh, man.
we can actually
It'd be nice
ask you
to
the
get
hard
more
questions.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys are
Yeah,
for
for
that.
sure.
Like I was gonna say like off the mic and be like, hey, this is going on. But you guys are like in the middle of podcast. I didn't have to say anything. Yo, let's do this. Did you guys ever think of that?
No.
That's a good idea.
Well, Cal and Courtney, we hope you've enjoyed your time on the podcast. We really do appreciate for you taking, 2 hours out of your day.
Yeah, much
and
longer
Courtney
than me.
with having a sore throat to actually speak for this long. So thank you so much. We all appreciate it. And I'm sure
My
that this
feet were broke while we were talking. So
Yeah, you look brighter eyed and more busy tailed. So.
Yeah, but honestly,
so if I
thank you
said
guys.
something idiotic, you can blame it on that. Whew.
No, you were both great. Honestly, we really do appreciate
Yes, we love you. Mwah.
it.
Guys are the
And
best.
I'm going to put you on the spot again. We always do this at the end of a podcast. So
I
what we
can't wait
like
to see what Courtney does with this. I'm just gonna say that
Yeah,
now.
yeah. What we like to do is let the guests end the podcast in the way that they seem fit. So Maddie and I are literally going to stop talking, and both you and Courtney and Cal, you guys are going to have to end the podcast in a unique way, however you think is the best way. So again, thank you for joining us, and take it and run.
Okay.
Because I'm a badass motherfucker. I would buy Taco Bell. Just fuck started
We are
in my mouth.
we are totally ending it there. That's awesome.